Welcome to Module 3 of the Tribal Data Toolbox training. And in this module, we are going to go over how to add administrative data to the toolbox. And by administrative data, I mean the personnel data, the site data, and the sampler data that need to be into the toolbox before you can import your pollutant concentration data into the toolbox. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the toolbox. And to do that, we're going to go to our menu here, our start menu. We're going to go into computer. And then we're going to go into our hard drive. And we need to go into our Tribal Data Toolbox _version 3.0 folder. And now we're going to double click on the Tribal Data Toolbox _version 3.0.ndb file to open it up. So we'll double click on that. And what comes up is the password required screen. And this is where you want to enter the database password that we have given you. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and click OK. So this is the opening screen of the toolbox, and this is where we're going to add our administrative data. So since this is the first time I've opened the toolbox, I want to go to the new users fast track form. So I do that by clicking on new users fast track. And that opens up this little form where there's several buttons I can use to add my personnel, my sites, and my samplers. There's also a help file here. If I click on this, it will open up the SOP that tells me how to do this. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click on the first button, which is the add personnel. So you want to do these in order. You want to first add your personnel, then you want to add your sites, and then you want to add your samplers. So I'm going to click on add personnel, and this form opens. And when these forms open up, they're maximized. And for me, it's easier to work on them if they're smaller. So I'm going to click on the restore button. And that's this button here that looks like two pieces of paper on top of each other. And you want to click on the lower one that when you mouse over it, it says restore window, and not the upper one, because that would make the whole database get small. You don't want the whole database small, you just want this form small. So you go mouse over the one that says restore window, and that makes the form smaller. And it might be that you like to work with the forms in full screen, and that's fine too. For me personally, I like to work with them like this. This is what we call a data entry form. And a data entry form is where you enter your data by hand rather than importing it from an external file. So on data entry forms, the color scheme on the fields indicate whether or not those fields are required. So on this form, we have two different color fields. We have the yellow fields and the white fields. And the yellow fields are the required fields. If it's yellow with a red border across it, like this initials field and this employee ID field, that means it's also a primary key in the database. And those are fields that once you enter the data, you cannot change them easily. So you want to be careful to enter the correct data into those fields first off. The yellow fields without red highlights you can easily change later on, but they are required fields, and the white fields are optional fields that you can fill in if you have that information. And we encourage you to fill in as much information as you can in these white fields, because it's always better to have more data than less data. In my AIR program, there are two people that work in my program that I'm going to enter into the toolbox. There's myself and my other employee named Misty Fairview. And I'm going to go ahead and start with entering Misty. So I'm going to type in Misty's name in the first name box, and you can see that my cursor is already there. And the best way to navigate through these forms is to use the tab key. So I'm going to press tab to go into the middle initial field and enter her middle initial, and then enter her last name. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter her initials and employee ID. So on employee ID, I'm a little bit confused about what I'm supposed to enter into this field. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the help file. So I'm going to click here for help file and see if the help file tells me anything about this employee ID field. Let's try that. Okay, so here is the help file for this form. And you can see that it opened right in the personnel section of the form. And I'm just going to scroll down and see if I can find anything about the employee ID field. So here's something. Employee ID. It is very important that you use an ID that cannot be permanently assigned to this person since this field cannot be easily changed. Okay, I know that. It says if this is a confidential number, such as a social security number, ITEP recommends that you make up a different number to use. So my program uses a kind of confidential number as the employee ID field. So I want to just enter a fake number for this because I don't want that to be in the toolbox. So I'm going to minimize this help form, and I'm just going to go ahead and enter an employee ID of P001. And the next field I tap to is the title field, and in this field you'll see that there's a drop down arrow button, and when you see a drop down arrow button it means there's a list of possible selections. So I'll click on this drop down arrow and see if Misty's title is in this list. So Misty is a field technician, so it's there, so I can go ahead and select that. If there was a title that you want to put in that's not in this list, you can type it in rather than selecting from the list. So I'll select field technician, then I tab over to the organization field, and I enter Misty's email address. Little misspelling there, so make sure you check these things after you enter them because there's always errors that could be made. Tab over to the phone number, and you'll see here that this has an input mask, what we call an input mask in database terms, and what that means is that it's already set up to enter the phone number, so you don't have to put the dashes in. They're already in there for you, so you just have to enter the numbers. And then if you had an extension, you can enter that here. I don't, so I'll click tab to go into the comments field, and I don't have any comments that I need to add, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the person active in project. Yeah, Misty is currently working for me, so she is definitely active. So I've completed entering all the data. So now what I want to do is there's two options here. There's a save personnel data and continue data entry, and save personnel data and exit data entry. Since I have another person I need to enter into the toolbox myself, I'm going to click on this button, save personnel data and continue data entry, and what that will do is open up a blank record for me to enter my personnel data in. So I'll go ahead and do that. And here's the blank record, and I'm just going to do the same thing I did for Misty. And I'm going to put in the fake employee ID here. And my title is actually not in the list, I don't think. Let me check. Manager, not quite. I'm a database person, so I'm going to enter database admin. Misty and I have the same phone number. And I'm also active in the project. So now that I've entered both my personnel data, what I want to do instead of save personnel and continue data entry, I want to click on save personnel and exit data entry, because what that will do it will close this form since I've completed entering my personnel data. So I'll go ahead and click on save personnel data and exit data entry. And what happens is this form pops up, and you can still use this form, that's totally fine. But since I want to demonstrate using the new user's fast track form, I'm just going to click the exit form button on this form.